Robservations with Robert, Meyer, Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination, your chancellor of cheerfulness, and of course, your existential Mr. Rogers, Robert Meyer Burnett. And once again, I am robcasting at you imagination connoisseurs. You members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. This would be Robservations episode 664. This is, of course, the show about something. Welcome, all of you. Big competition today. You got Friday Night Tights over on Nerdrotic's channel with a murderer's row of great YouTubers. I got John Campia's live doing a spoiler show. But you know what? I am wading into this space, eyes open, full hearts, going right ahead, moving forward, here for you on a Friday afternoon. Anyway, Falcon and Winter Soldier episode 4 dropped. Now, I have to say I've been, I guess, going from WandaVision, which had an overwhelming response from people on the internet, I think because, on the internet, because it was a mystery, I think. You couldn't help but wonder what was going to happen and speculate. This is a far more straightforward show. However, I have to say, I've been very impressed. What I wanted was more of a Lethal Weapon vibe, sort of Tom Clancy, Jack Ryan, globe-trotting, espionage action. And as this show has started to unfurl like a flag, or like the Flag Smashers want to not unfurl flags, I've been very surprised by the direction this show has taken. A lot of people have been like, well, it's not my favorite, I haven't really enjoyed it, or I think maybe that's because, in a way, this show has become something far more than what I expected it to be. There are a lot of tough questions. I think of all of the MCU films, and I am an unabashed supporter and fan of the MCU because I think it does a terrific job of honoring the original comic book universe it is all derived from, and yet it provides great popcorn escapist entertainment, but also underneath it's been providing some very provocative underpinnings and themes that it's explored, but never as much as this show has. There is so much going on in this show, and as it's moved forward, it's dealing with some really tough issues. And this episode 4, more so than ever. And I was quite taken aback by just how head-on this show is willing to deal with many subjects. On one hand, people have talked about, well, Rob, it's kind of a woke show. God, I hate that term. But we all know kind of what it means. I'm using woke as a shorthand, that it's addressing issues du jour and issues that have never gone away, but things that seem to be fashionable today. However, I would say that within the context of what this show is doing, Falcon and the Winter Soldier has been doing some very heavy lifting, probably the heaviest lifting of anything we've ever received yet from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. 23 movies, 2 shows. So this is the 25th outing. I know Black Widow was already supposed to be here. I'm sure Black Widow, if this is any indicator, really am looking forward to Black Widow, because I think Black Widow was supposed to have come out before these films. So I definitely think it's going to be a turning point in terms of where the MCU is going. But it was very interesting to watch this show because, of course, first of all, the idea that the world, we never really saw what was going on with the world during the 5 years that Thanos, the snapping, the blip as they call it now, but after the snapping, what happened to the world? And with suddenly half the population of the planet gone, meaning every person, every walk of life, every profession, half the people disappeared. Like if you have a nuclear power plant that your country relies on, France is big into nuclear power, what happens when half those people just don't show up at work? You have to fill the gaps. And, you know, the idea that national, international boundaries mattered very little. What happened to Europe, for instance, in that time? Were there any more national boundaries? Were people really worried about, I don't know, holding on to their culture? It was a different world. And yet, when everyone comes back, basically, we're now dealing with the world after it had moved on. 5 years later, the Avengers succeed, everybody comes back, and the world is thrown into a state of turmoil. And that was something we'd only ever seen so far in Spider-Man Far From Home. And it was played kind of for laughs, it was kind of funny, but now we're seeing the real-world ramifications of what this means. The idea that a group like the Flag Smashers want to get rid of those international boundaries and keep things the status quo as to the way they were during the snapping, during the blip, and yet when people come back, what do you do? The fact that people who haven't been around for 5 years have no credit, they've got no job, they've got nothing. How do they reintegrate into society? And there's a criminal element, of course, everything that was going on in Madripoor, and there's just a whole lot of things happening that I think have deepened and broadened the canvas that is it is our understanding of the MCU. The groundwork has been laid here for a lot of stuff, more so than they could deal with in the films. And obviously, we saw in WandaVision what Wanda Maximoff was dealing with in terms of her own grief, coming back, finding out the world was the way it was. And in this case, we have two characters, both in Sam Wilson and in Bucky Barnes. These are two men that are searching for their place in the universe. They haven't been around for the last 5 years. They were also dealing with things. I mean, Sam was a man that was helping his fellow vets. The Winter Soldier, obviously the trauma that he was dealing with, coming back into the world, Captain America, bringing him back, saving his soul, essentially, even though he feels that he perhaps wasn't worth saving. Obviously, the Wakandans helped him a great deal. There's a lot going on from an emotional and storytelling standpoint in this series and also in WandaVision, but I think in this series they're dealing with things on a much broader canvas that I'm surprised by. I'm surprised by the sophistication and the storytelling of this show. Now, do I think it's perfect? Certainly not. I have heard that there was a lot of reshooting that was done. This was going to be their first show, their first out of the gate, so obviously it made sense that there's a lot of stuff that went on behind the scenes, and COVID hit, so there's a few rough patches, but I have to say, for the most part, from the production quality of this show to the acting to the surprising direction the story has been going in, I have to say that I'm very impressed by this. And what's most impressive to me is the tone and the level of adult sophistication that they're shooting for, which is something that I find surprising. This is not a show for children. It hasn't shied away from violence, especially in this episode 4. And you know, it's been interesting dealing with fan reactions to this show, because I think a lot of people were like, clearly there is not the groundswell of interest that there was in WandaVision. However, I do think what's going on in this show is really worthy of study, and there's only 2 more episodes left, and I'm very curious to see where it goes. I think when we get through with this, I'm hoping I'll feel the same way I felt when I read, say, Chris Claremont's Wolverine miniseries. Chris Claremont and Frank Miller, you know, they did a 4-issue miniseries, and you're like, wow, I feel this is a really top drawer miniseries, a limited series, the way you would get in Marvel Comics. Now, there's a really interesting article today, that was published in the Hollywood Reporter, once again by Richard Newby in Heat Vision. I'm a fan of Richard Newby's. I think that he's a terrific writer, genre writer. He writes a lot about science fiction, fantasy, and horror for the Hollywood Reporter and other publications we know. And he's a black man, which I think is important. So, because the article I'm going to read, I think that's important to know where he's coming from. So he's approaching it from that perspective, the fact that he's a black man, black American. And this article I thought that he wrote was definitely worth sharing, and I'm going to share it. Falcon and Winter Soldier explores a tragic truth about America. And there's spoilers here, obviously. So I'm going to just jump in. And again, this is the article by Mr. Richard Newby. It was from the Hollywood Reporter today, from their Heat Vision column. The desire to become a superhuman cannot be separated from supremacist ideals. Anyone with the serum, the super soldier serum, is inherently on that path. Baron Zemo, Daniel Bruhl, tells Sam Wilson, Anthony Mackie, and Bucky Barnes, Sebastian Stan, early in the 4th episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The Whole World is Watching, directed by Kerry Skoglund and written by Derek Kolstad of John Wick fame, Zemo admits that Steve Rogers was an exception to his theory. But what makes Steve Rogers mutually exclusive to the idea of being a super soldier and a supremacist? How did Steve Rogers manage to uphold the concept of Captain America when all of the potential successors to his mantle, Sam Wilson, Bucky Barnes, Carly Morgenthau, and John Walker, are each struggling with what Captain America means and if one should even exist? Steve Rogers was afforded the curse and comforts of being a man out of time. To exist as a national and global symbol solely within this modern era and attempt to achieve it in the same vein as Steve Rogers is to ultimately come face to face with failure. John Walker and the world along with him learn the brutal truth of what that failure looks like in this latest episode. In Captain America, the First Avenger from 2011, Dr. Erskine, played by Stanley Tucci, said Steve was the right man for the super soldier serum because he was a good man. But good men can change through either will or circumstance, and goodness is relative. It was one thing for Steve to stand as America's good man during World War II, fighting against Nazis when good and evil was so clearly defined, but in modern America, the ideals of goodness shifted, creating an open wound between what is and what should be. Steve experienced this wound during the events of Captain America the Winter Soldier in 2014 and Captain America Civil War, leading him to drop the mantle and become Nomad. In truth, Steve Rogers spent more time standing in opposition to the U.S. government than alongside it, and for good reason. The evils of American bureaucracy may have been coded through Hydra and terrorist puppets, but the allegorical intentions were clear. The government, be it in the form of S.H.I.E.L.D., Alexander Pierce, played by Robert Redford, Secretary Ross, played by William Hurt, Vice President Rodriguez, Miguel Ferrer, could not be trusted. Steve Rogers clearly didn't represent the U.S. government, so what did he represent? American ideals born of the greatest generation? Supposedly. But truth, justice, and freedom aren't concepts exclusive to America. And as tenets, they don't even work particularly well for the majority of Americans. As Sarah Wilson says in the latest episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that's Sam's sister, "My world doesn't matter to America, so why should I care about its mascot?" Steve Rogers therefore represented a country that did not and does not exist in the MCU or in reality. It's this very topic that Ta-Nehisi Coates has been grappling with in his current run on Captain America, in which Steve Rogers, unwanted by the government and the American people, is often referred to as Captain of Nothing. And perhaps therein lies the answers to Steve Rogers' existence as an exception to Zemo's theory. As Captain of Nothing, there is no country or concept through which to seek supremacy. And if you're a symbol that is unneeded and unwanted, then you're granted the luxury of fighting for yourself and those in your personal circle, the people you know. But can that move the world? It certainly didn't in Sarah's case or in Isaiah Bradley's. Now, let me just stop here. And Ta-Nehisi Coates, who's currently writing Captain America and who also wrote on Black Panther, is a rather controversial writer. He wrote a book that I read called Between the World and Me. I don't know when it was written, but I don't know, I want to say 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. It's a great book. And he basically wrote it in the form of a letter to his son, talking about his life. I mean, he's obviously a black man. He believes in reparations, and he doesn't have a very how should we say this? He doesn't have a very he doesn't look favorably upon white people very much. And understandably so. I think that he has a lot of valid points, but his ideas of reparation and things are problematic. And he's recently, if you watch YouTube a lot, he recently basically cast the Red Skull as Jordan Peterson, and has the Red Skull basically paraphrasing a lot of what Jordan Peterson has written about in his books. Jordan Peterson, I'm sure everybody knows who he is, but he has been wrongly branded some kind of right-wing supremacist, which is ridiculous. I think that's an easy way. He's been tarred and feathered with a ridiculous brush that I don't believe applies to him, even though someone like Ta-Nehisi Coates is, trading one oppression for another, in a way. But his book is interesting. He is a great writer. I think that he has a lot of resentment towards white America that I won't get into. I'll leave you to explore his writings on your own. But it's interesting stuff, and they're clearly taking from his Captain America run. At least some of it is inspiring this show. John Walker wants to move the world, even if it means widening the wound. His every action, his impatience, his aggressive loudness is an effort to force change. As the conversation between him and his best friend and partner Lamar Hoskins, a.k.a. Battlestar, played by Clay Bennett, reveals, his efforts in Afghanistan, through which he was awarded 3 Medals of Honor, didn't change the world and couldn't be considered honorable actions in the public eye. He sees the chance to be Captain America as his only chance to prove himself a good man. But for who is he moving the world for? Not for the citizens of the world displaced by the blip, and not for those struggling to make ends meet as resources once again become subject to border regulations. John Walker wants to move the world for America, but only America as it pertains to the government. Yet he's naive because the same government that sent him to Afghanistan to fight a war in which he found no honor is the same one which gave him the shield through which he'll find no honor either. He serves a government driven by ulterior motives and a military-industrial complex that chews up young men and women and leaves the country with deficits impossible to pay off. Walker and Sam Wilson are both soldiers of modern wars, and yet they walked away from those experiences very different. Wilson turned his attention to healing, to serving as a counselor for veterans. Walker is only looking for the next war, the next target, and if the government says it's the Flag Smashers, then it's the Flag Smashers he'll hunt down. Power makes a person more themselves, Lamar tells Walker when asked if he would be concerned with the side effects of taking the super soldier serum. Walker, as viewers soon find out, enhanced by the super soldier serum, only becomes more insecure, more aggressive, and more convinced in the moral superiority of his own government. And the death of Lamar, killed by the Flag Smashers, unleashes something else. A walking mascot of America, the real America, in all of its carelessness, cruelty, and displaced sense of justice. John Walker essentially becomes, true to his comic book moniker, a U.S. agent. It's notable that it's Lamar Hoskins' death that serves to reveal the true Walker to the world. Though the character hails from the comics, there is certainly something to be said about the black best friend who serves as an emotional support to a white man, yet there is intentionally in this trope in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and not only in terms of creating foils for Sam Wilson and Bucky Barnes. As the black sidekick, Lamar Hoskins represents the thing Sam Wilson is afraid of being seen as, which is why Walker referring to him as Cap's wingman irks him. Lamar Hoskins being seen as lesser than Walker while doing just as much work and putting his life on the line just as often is highlighted in the scene in which Walker is asked for an autograph, but Lamar is not. The encounter is played off with a bit of humor, and Lamar mentions that it's a shame he isn't asked because he's worked out a Battlestar insignia to go with his signature. There is a sadness in this admission, surely picked up on by black viewers, this position of serving the government and still being unwanted. This is a very good point that I think that Richard is making here, because as we know, when black soldiers came back from fighting in World War II gallantly and having horrible things like the Tuskegee experiments, they weren't even allowed to avail themselves of the GI Bill, which stopped a lot of perhaps wealth being generated that could have been passed on, generational wealth that eluded black America because of the way they were treated even after serving their country. There's a lot of this that's bubbling underneath the surface of Falcon and Winter Soldier that I think makes it certainly worth watching and certainly worth considering more than your average MCU fare. Battlestar is a thankless job, and if Walker represents the government, then Lamar Hoskins represents how that government uses black people through war as a means to escape poverty and through poverty as a means to enlist, and has been suggested by Sam's entry into the Air Force. Walker's rage in the face of Lamar's death isn't performative, but it will undoubtedly be used as an excuse to commit further acts of aggression that only serve to empower the people America wants to empower. It's a story we've seen time and again in our own reality. The deaths of Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Fred Hampton, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, serving as pulpits for white voices and leaders who fail to enact real change, yet still sell the idea of truth, freedom, and justice under the notion of American supremacy. As Carly says, these corporations and the beasts who run them, they're the supremacists. Perhaps she's right. But if so, then it seems at best super soldiers are most often tools for supremacists. Can there be a new Captain America when America itself as a whole does not represent goodness? Is the best we can hope for a captain of nothing? If Sam Wilson is ultimately going to take up the shield and the mantle, then he'll have to do so with the acknowledgement that America as it exists is a failure, the opposite of supreme. He'll have to become a Captain America that isn't founded in past ideals, but one founded in an America yet to be, one that must be earned through enacting real and immediate change by defying borders and moving the world by healing it. I have to say, reading that article, I was like, my God, Richard Newby, this is exactly what I felt Falcon and the Winter Soldier has been dealing with. I've been sitting here going, my God, this is a pretty damn deep show, especially for the MCU. And they've really pulled no punches. And I have to say, one of the things that I thought really came through in episode 4 was the conflict that is boiling inside of John Walker. He's a man that he's a decorated soldier, and he was probably given the mantle of Captain America because of the great work he'd already done. He was already an American hero, and yet he was given the mantle and called the same name as a man who'd traveled through time, who'd fought in World War II, who literally fought against gods and titans, and alongside gods and titans. So no matter what they told John Walker, he himself knew, I'm not really Captain America as much as I might want to try. I'm not a super soldier. I didn't travel through time, or at least become a man out of time. Fighting Thanos, being part of the team that brought back half of humanity. Doesn't matter what label you hung on John Walker, he's never going to be that guy. And imagine when you're trying to uphold the principles and uphold what it means to be that guy, and knowing you're never going to be him. So when he's offered the chance to take the super soldier serum, and he asks his best friend, Battlestar, should I do it? Battlestar says, yep, absolutely. Why? Why is there a question? But in Walker's mind, at least what I got from the show, is he doesn't know. He's not sure. Because he doesn't know if he's worthy. Is he a fraud? And I think all of us can relate to that on this level. And it was amazing to me that this fourth episode, which really is asking a lot of pertinent and difficult political and social and emotional questions, there are no easy answers. And I was really impressed with where the show is going. Now, I know a lot of people probably are like, I just want my superhero action. I get that. I understand. But what we're getting from this show is maybe more than we deserve. This, to me, is great, thoughtful entertainment. It's being produced at the highest level, and I'm honestly shocked that we're getting a TV show that's delving into these areas, especially coming from the MCU, and following up on the heels of WandaVision, which also took a superhero character, to places that she'd been in the comics, but we hadn't seen, certainly, again, as part of the MCU. And if this is where they're going with their streaming shows, I thought they were going to be reliant far more on maybe action, adventure, but no, both of these shows are incredibly thoughtful and have so much to offer. And I'm so impressed. I also want to mention, of course, one of the great things that I loved about this week's episode is the return of Ayo and the Dora Milaje. And one of the things that was funny, the opening of this episode, you find out about how did Bucky break free of his Winter Soldier programming, and it opens in Wakanda, and we see Ayo helping Bucky, and is there when Bucky is finally free of his programming. And as an aside, I have to say I was watching the opening sequence, and Florence Kasumba plays Ayo, and I was watching this, and I turned to Elizabeth, and I'm looking at her face in the firelight, and I'm like, does this woman have one of the most beautiful faces I've ever seen in my life? And Elizabeth's like, I was just thinking that. Not that that's an aside that means anything, but I loved her. I love her as an actress. I love the way she looks. I love how powerful she seems. But in this scene with Bucky, I mean, you know, what I'm loving about these shows is it's taking secondary characters. I mean, she's been there. She was in Black Panther. We saw her in Infinity War. She's been around, but she's never been pushed to the forefront. And I loved that opening scene. And when she comes back and her scenes with Bucky, and then when she shows up with the rest of the Dora Milaje in this episode and kicks major bootay, I was like, this shit is dope as fuck. And I'm like there for it. I mean, she was in Wonder Woman. But Florence, by the way, that was my grandmother's name, Flo Florence. So maybe that's another reason why I love her. But man, she's Ugandan and German. I think she was born in Uganda, but she emigrated to Germany or something. I think she's a fantastic presence. I love the Dora Milaje in this episode. I Hot Toys. Hello. How about a 3-pack of Dora Milaje Warriors, Okoye, Ayo, and maybe somebody else? Come on, man. Make it happen. 3-pack Dora Milaje. Bring it on. And why not introduce them as part of your Falcon and Winter Soldier line, of which you've only introduced the Winter Soldier. But wouldn't that be cool? Girls would buy those too. You'd have a whole different market. But I thought she was incredible. The representation of the Dora Milaje in this, they were badasses. Watching their fighting skills. I love when John Walker's like, they weren't even super soldiers, and they bested his ass But it was really, really, really great, really compelling stuff. And I got Daniel Bruhl as Nemo, as Zemo. Incredible stuff. I mean, just the way they're developing his character, the way he finds out information. I mean, obviously, I think there's gonna be a big villain turn. I was surprised though. I thought maybe at the end he would become a super soldier himself, but he was smashing that serum. So maybe not. Maybe he kept one. I don't know. But again, this episode, very compelling, really interesting things to contemplate here. And kudos to Kevin Feige and Victoria Alonso and Louis D'Esposito and the entire team over at Marvel for creating some entertainment that's not just a great addition to the MCU, but really makes you think. And also very different. The kind of diversity, I don't mean diversity in terms of people or color. I mean diversity in terms of the kind of stories that they're telling. A lot of people are like, well, these stories are a little repetitive. These are, WandaVision and this couldn't be more different from one another, and kudos to them for really, really taking chances. I'm very impressed. I'm sorry to say there's only 2 more episodes, which is a major bummer. But I'm curious to hear what you all think. I want to say thank you to Richard Newby for this article. Very, very compelling stuff. Really interesting. And I know it's not exactly the standard bill of fare on this show, but without veering off into crazy political land, this show is definitely doing some things that I find to be very unexpected. And what do you guys think? I don't know. So I got a box. In the mail. And I know how you guys love unboxings. Here's the box that I received in the mail. And I got a letter. I'm going to read it and unbox it. I've not opened what's in here, so I do not know what is in this box. April 5th, 2021, 4 days ago. Hi, R&B. I hope you don't mind me sending this directly to you, but I've already sent a package to you via the Iowa post office address about 4 weeks ago, and I believe you have yet to receive it. Well, that's because Mike Bodden, at the Iowa address, he collects things and sends them to me about every 4 or 5 months, and then we do an unboxing. I couldn't wait any longer than I have for you to receive and enjoy what I've sent you. I remember in an episode of John Campia's show, you mentioned TV movie Cars that you like, and you mentioned Han's car from the Fast and Furious, and also Penelope's pink Cadillac from the Thunderbirds. That would be Lady Penelope Crichton Ward's pink Cadillac. I also know that you and I enjoy the series UFO. As I mentioned in a letter that you were nice enough to read on Robservations over a week ago, this is my way of showing appreciation to your show. Thank you, and enjoy what I've sent, and stay metal. All right, Fernando. This is from Fernando Barrero, who is an Imagination Connoisseur member. Well, Fernando, you make me want to sing an ABBA song. Let's see what we got in here. Ooh, let's see what we got here. I'll start with this one. I don't know what this is. Well, look at this. The Nostromo from Aliens. I think this is a trading kit. This is dope. There it is, the Nostromo from Aliens. Wow, dude, this is pretty rad. I don't want to open it now because it's small. It'll lose the parts, but wow, there's instructions. How cool is that? It smells good. It's like maybe it came with bubble gum. I don't know. That's amazing. Thank you for that. This is like Christmas, man. I mean, oh, look at this. Look at this. Oh, yeah. I don't have this. This is badass. Han's Mazda RX-7 from the Fast and the Furious. Dude, this is dope. I didn't even know they made these. I mean, I shouldn't, I guess. Oh, this is going up on the shelf. By the way, I'm going to open this and take it out of the box and put it up on the shelf. Han's RX-7. Han Solo himself. That's dope, dude. Thanks for that. Wow. But there's more. There is... Oh, look at this. Look at this. First of all, I got Lady Penelope's pink Rolls Royce from the Thunderbirds, Lady Penelope Crichton Award. Wow, thank you so much for that. Look at that, man. This is so kind of you. And here is a Shadow. You've seen me wear my Shadow t-shirt. Here is a Shadow patch. So, by the way, Shadow stands for Supreme Headquarters Alien Defense Organization. And there is a nice, look at this pin. Look at that. A metal Shadow pin. Wow, dude. I don't know what to say, Fernando. And there's also something else in here that I will look at. Oh, look at this. What is this? Wow. Look at this. This is what is this? UFO Series 2 Unstoppable Cards. Is this a UFO card game? Okay, for those of you who are wondering, bewildered now, going, what is UFO, Rob? First of all, Fernando, this is amazing. Thank you so much for this. Unbelievable. And I don't know what to say. That's a very, very nice, what a thoughtful package of stuff. UFO Series 2 Unstoppable cards. UFO is a TV series that was made between 1969 and 1971. It was Jerry Anderson who made Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet and Supercar and Fireball XL5 and Stingray and Thunderbirds, Terrahawks, Joe 90. Those are Super Marionation shows. It was his first foray into live action. It was a very expensive, very cool show. I've shown some things from it on here before. It's one of my favorite science fiction shows of all time. It's something I would love to reboot. Bill Hunt and I created a pitch document where we wanted to pitch it to ITV. They didn't. I don't think they bought off on our idea, even though I think it's great and we should still do it again. But it's a great show, and it's about a multinational organization, Shadow, that is waging a covert war against aliens that are coming to Earth and abducting people and using body parts in a effort to save their race. And you can find UFO. It's an incredible show. Very mod, very hip, very cool. It was set in 1980, and I highly recommend it if you're a fan of that kind of thing. So, Fernando, thank you so much. What a kind box of goodness. Christmas in April, or an early birthday present. Either way, thank you so much. It's very nice of you. Daniel Hernandez writes in and says, "Hello, sir. I just want to say how much I love Robservations. I watch your program every morning when I'm at work, and it makes my mornings a lot better. Anyway, I just wanted to send a short letter. I know we live in crazy times, and when I'm stressed out or in a bad mood, there's one thing I do that makes me feel better. I watch trailer reactions of popular movies. Sometimes we need to stop and see just how much content we do have. We live in a world now where we can choose from so much content, it blows my mind to really think about it. But when I watch these trailer reactions, the fans watching them are so happy. Whether it's Zack Snyder's cut of the Justice League or the ending of The Mandalorian or a new MCU movie, everyone at that moment is happy, or sometimes even crying. We live in an age of superheroes. Isn't that amazing? Anyway, I just wanted to spread some love out there. I love what you do, and stay safe." Well, Daniel, what a nice letter. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. You know, one of the reasons I want to get involved in John Campia's movie trailers, A Love Story, is because he dealt a little bit with trailer reactions. And I think you're right. I've been saying for the 6 years I've been on YouTube, as of course everyone knows, April 14th will be my 6th anniversary being on YouTube. I began with John Campia and John Schnepp on AMC Heroes, later Collider Heroes, and I'm still here today, for better or for worse. But I want to thank you for spreading that love. Yub nub, celebrate the love. But you're right. I mean, we live in a time where there's so much great stuff. The Jupiter's Legacy trailer dropped. I can't wait to see that show. I love that comic. And my God, we live in an amazing time where we have all this incredible content and all this incredible, if you're an imagination connoisseur, we're doing pretty well. And there's a lot of neat stuff, which is fantastic. So thanks for writing in. This one comes from Ruben Hilbers. Ruben Hilbers writes in and says, "Hi, Rob. After a silly letter, Mama Hulk, I felt that I had time to come for a more serious conversation about Star Trek Discovery. Sort of. CBS pretends like things are fine with Disco and Paramount Plus in general. Who the fuck do they think they're kidding? The rerun ratings for Discovery Season 1 are horrible, and the worth of their stocks have plummeted to half of what they used to be. And there is more hurt to be had. The Lenkoff/NCIS verse has begun to slowly implode. Don't believe me? Hawaii Five-0 is already gone. NCIS is swapping New Orleans for Hawaii, and today news is broken that the MacGyver reboot will end on April 30th. And the main show, NCIS, is killing off characters like it's their new favorite sport. Jackie Sloan left, Brina Palmer died, Emily Fresnel died, and now there are even rumors that Ducky Mallard might be headed to the great classroom in the sky. Wow, really? But I think the harbinger of doom for Star Trek is not Special Agent Leroy Jethro Gibbs. I think it's William Peterson and Dr. Gil Grissom. Now, I could be wrong, but back in the day, CBS was kept afloat by the NCIS verse and the CSI verse. Then the CSI verse vaporized. I got the impression that New Trek was supposed to become the new pillar to replace it. Well, they're certainly trying with all those shows they're making. But now there is a CSI Vegas revival in the works. So what if the CSI verse manages to reignite? Doctor Who proved it can be done. What will that spell for Star Trek? Your thoughts? Regards, Ruben. P.S. Your last disco rant was epic. Boy, does the writing on that show stink. Well, Ruben, you clearly park your shuttlecraft in the same shuttle bay as I do. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, they are bringing back CSI. It's not going to be called CSI anymore. It's CSI Vegas. And yes, they're bringing back Georgia Fox and William Peterson to play Gil Grissom again. I mean, that's... really? Okay. I mean, I like that show, but my God, how much CSI do we really need? How far behind can David Caruso be? Why not add him in the cast, too? And while you're at it, get Gary Sinise and make the Avengers of CSI characters and put them in one show. Make it CSI America. I mean, it's very odd. Yeah, I think Star Trek has got a lot of money against it. It's a very expensive show. They're trying to make it happen. And I don't know if they can. Certainly not with the writing. I mean, as much as I hate Spectre, and I hated Sam Smith's song, The Writing's on the Wall, maybe they should look at that. But you know what? They're not, because, oh, lo and behold, a new, untitled, mysterious Star Trek movie was announced today. Yet another one. There's been more Star Trek movie announcements than there have been Flash movie announcements over at Warner Brothers. But yep, it's an untitled Star Trek movie that's been slated for release in 2023. They're not saying what it's about or who is making it. I don't even know if they know themselves. I think they probably just announced a release date and said, yep, we're going to make a Star Trek movie come hell or high water. And of course, the hostage crisis continues. Rather than bring in some new blood, it's once again Bad Robot. My God, do those guys know how to get their teeth into a franchise and really make it? I mean, in that case, you're going to be in 2023. You're looking from 2009 to 2023. Bad Robot has been controlling the franchise. That's longer than the classic characters were in movies of their own. 1979 to 1991. From Star Trek the Motion Picture to Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. We've now got 2009 to 2023. 14 years. And while we got 6 movies in 14 years from the classic crew, we're going to get 4 movies apparently. And the last movie cost $185 million, not including marketing, and grossed about $350 million. Not a great return. It didn't even double the budget in its box. And yet, Bad Robot keeps coming back for more. Boy, I don't know what voodoo doll they have or what Perhaps I should consult Satan, the old scratch, if he shows up on the 666 show. I'm like, bruh, does J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot, did they sign a pact with you? Are they like the John Cassavetes from Rosemary's Baby? You know, did Roman Castevet come along and say, hey, Guy Woodhouse, do you want success on Broadway? Well, we really want your wife to give birth to the son of Satan. Maybe J.J. Abrams is in that same position. Who knows? I don't know. But we shall see. I can't believe they're making yet another Star Trek movie. Woohoo! How awesome. Let's see. This one comes from Martin Lawrence. Martin Lawrence says, greetings and salutations, Rob. I wanted to write in and champion a series of novels by Peter Clines called Ex-Heroes. The basic premise is superheroes versus zombies. And initially that sounds hokey, but Peter puts a lot of time into world building and the characters of the 5 novels in the series. We are living in a time where the superhero genre is dominating the big and small screen, and these novels feel like a breath of fresh air. And just to put it out there, I quite enjoy Star Trek Discovery. It's not a patch on The Next Generation, but I would take these characters over Janeway's shenanigans in a holodeck any day. There's an over-reliance on nostalgia and not trying to boldly go with brand new characters, and at times it doesn't feel like Star Trek, but for 45 minutes it holds my attention. I'm sure you have some thoughts on this. Please be gentle. Yours sincerely, Martin Lawrence. Well, Martin, I love a new take on the zombie genre, so I'll check those books out. I was unaware of them, and I usually am pretty up on my horror novels. Look, I will say this. Obviously, everyone knows how I feel about modern Star Trek. If you don't, just a couple of days ago, you can go watch Robservations and find out. But here's one thing, and I want to be very clear. Somebody actually brought this up in the comments on that particular episode. I do not begrudge anyone that likes modern Star Trek. I don't want to tell anyone if they like something, well, you shouldn't like that. If you like something, you like it. You should embrace it. You should love it. Don't let anyone else tell you shouldn't like it. That's ridiculous. And I'm hoping that if people are going to experience Star Trek Discovery, it's going to be their first experience with Star Trek. Hopefully, if they do like it, they'll find their way back to all the other Star Treks and realize what they've been missing. But I never want to take away from anybody that likes something. So if you like modern Star Trek and it works for you, I think that's great. Embrace it, enjoy it. I mean, they're certainly spending enough money on it, so you should be enjoying it. They could spend themselves into oblivion, but for me, they do a little bit different in terms of the scripting of that show. They're not gonna win me around. But I appreciate you like the show, Martin. It's important, and if you like it, and you obviously seem to like Next Gen, but not Voyager, maybe it'll bring you back to Deep Space Nine or something. Or you can even delve into the original series if you haven't. So I think it's great. I think it's great. If people like Star Trek and they like modern Star Trek, I don't ever want to dissuade everyone or make people think that they shouldn't like it, because that isn't true. I mean, I'm not going to tell you shouldn't not like something. Arnold Schwarzenegger, our old friend Arnold Schwarzenegger, writes in and says, Dear Rob, I hope you're well. The Terminator is back. I recently saw you on the John Campea show yesterday. You talked about the potential release strategy for Dune. You quoted the Deadline article, which mentions that WB and Legendary still haven't decided if it goes day and date streaming. However, here's the catch. Legendary CEO Joshua Grode had an interview with NBC this very morning, well before the show, where he talked about the future theatrical windows. He was very happy with the box office performance with Godzilla vs. Kong. He does not believe that HBO Max cannibalized the box office in any way. Overall, he was happy that the movie was both a theatrical and streaming success. Naturally, he then talked about Dune. I will copy and paste exactly what he said. We have another movie coming up, Dune, which is on path to be a day-and-date release. And you know, we have a great partner in WB who recognizes the benefit on getting content on HBO Max. They're leaning in as a good partner with Dune to make this a mutually beneficial relationship. In other words, the legendary CEO himself states that the movie will indeed receive a simultaneous release with HBO Max. The Deadline author just quoted an insider source which claimed that the strategy was undecided, but judging by what the CEO himself has said, his claim was not all too credible. Or at the very least, it was misleading, along the consequence of news reports who followed Deadline's original story. Anyhow, the link for the video interview is as follows. Here, let me put that in the live chat for those of you who might want to jump in and check this out. I will give it to you right here. I personally believe this is the right move. After all, Dune is a niche product, and so it will need the help, all the help it can get. HBO Max can serve as a way of maximizing the audience potential. At the same time, Dune will still be in theaters, so there will be added value to the movie. I think this tactic will allow everybody to be happy. Maybe streaming will even encourage people to get a theatrical experience later. Otherwise, in a theatrical-only situation, Dune will get absolutely squashed between the releases of Marvel's Shang-Chi, Sony's Venom Let There Be Carnage, and James Bond's No Time to Die. In case you didn't know, Dune is expected to release 2 weeks earlier in international territories before the simultaneous American release. It faces stiff competition in both markets. At least HBO Max gives it a lifeline. What do you think, Rob? Anyhow, that's it for me. Just thought I would bring this to your attention. May God bless you and your family, and I hope you have a wonderful and marvelous day. Until next time, kind regards. I'll be back. Terminator out. Well, Arnold, I think that there's something to be said there. I mentioned that I heard from an industry source, a very trusted industry source that I have. When I say industry source, I mean trusted industry source, who said he talked to somebody who had seen Dune and said it was a long, beautiful mess of a movie. Now here's my, what does that mean? Beautiful mess would necessarily have maybe a connotation, a bad connotation, but my whole thing is this. I never know if people are science fiction fans. I don't know if they can buy into the world building. I don't know. I'd have to know what their taste is before I can put any credence into what they're saying. But Dune is Dune. And I read the script, and I thought the script was a great adaptation of the first half of Frank Herbert's novel. I'm a huge fan of that novel. From what I understand, the plan was originally, and I'm not saying they were going to do this originally, but the proposed plan is they were going to make 3 Dune films that detail the rise and fall of Paul Atreides, if you know your Dune. So the first movie is Dune, the second movie would be Dune Prophet, and the third movie would be Dune Messiah. And if you know what happened to the rule of Duke Leto, well, actually not that Duke Leto, Duke Leto II, it isn't good. But I'm there for it. I'd love to see it. Many billions of people die, actually, in what happens in that story, which you can read. You can get. This is no spoiler alert, really. Well, I guess it is. You consider books that have been out for the better part of 50 years. But I'm a huge Dune fan. Although, to be fair, I've only read the 6 books: Dune, Dune Messiah, Children of Dune, God Emperor of Dune, Heretics of Dune, and Chapter House Dune. That's it. That's it for me. Those are the books that Frank Herbert himself wrote. He also wrote interesting books. I think the White Plague and the Lazarus. I forget what else. And good stuff. Anyway, I think Dune's not for everybody. Dune is a heady mix of science fiction and world building and religion and ecology, all kinds of things. And I can understand why somebody might call it a big, long, beautiful mess of a movie. But if you know the book, and I thought the screenplay was fantastic, I can't wait to see Dune, especially with that cast. So, we shall see. Calvin Bowles writes in, and as everyone knows, his son Braxton, who's 6, is a big part of our channel. Calvin has written in with the impressions of his young sons. Calvin says, "Dear Rob, last week I took Braxton and Hendrickson to the drive-in to see Godzilla vs. Kong. Both boys were excited to go because Only the last weekend they played the 1933 King Kong and loved it. But 20 minutes into the film, both boys were asleep. So I asked myself, why would a movie with great special effects filmed in color bore them, and a black and white film that is almost 90 years old did not? One thing the 1933 King Kong had that the new film did not were great and memorable characters. You watch this film and you care about the people. Who can watch this and not fall in love with Ann Darrow? Care about her, and you don't want anything bad to happen to her. You also have Jack Driscoll, who wants nothing to do with women until he meets Ann, and showman Carl Denham, who's determined to get a girl for his picture even if he has to marry one. These people help to carry us to the anticipation of seeing Kong. If we do not care about these people, the film would drag in the first 30 minutes before we actually see Kong. Now let's look at the characters in Godzilla vs. Kong. Other than the little deaf girl, we have no interesting characters, and all these people do is give us exposition. Also, the story in the 1933 film, I can buy into an Uncharted island with dinosaurs, but the idea of Kong living under a man-made dome is, well, just stupid. Also, what was missing from the film was not fun, and the original King Kong was fun, except for the ending, which is sad. But I found you cared more for Kong in this film. The bottom line is great CGI does not add up to a great film. I personally would rather see a great story with great characters and cheapo effects than great effects and bad characters and story. And maybe if the producers gave us this, my boys would not have fallen asleep. Well, I have to say, Calvin, if kids fall asleep in Godzilla vs. Kong, that's all I need to know. Yeah. And I can't argue with your logic. Can't argue with your logic. Dean Mikitich writes in, "Hi, Rob and the Post-Geek Singularity. Why do consumers go after Kathleen Kennedy, Alex Kurtzman, the overseers of the DC films, etc., when it comes to franchises we love? Rob, you have said it yourself. They're putting out a bad product. Unlike other products like food and electronics or cars or so on, if there's something defective with it, I can't return it to the store and get a refund or exchange it for a product that is working. Let's say I go to the cinema and I see a really bad film. I can't go back to the ticket office afterward and demand a full refund or a percentage that goes to the studio. After all, I have no issues with the service the cinema has provided. And it's the same when it comes to TV shows. Sure, I could cancel my subscription to the streaming service, but with Netflix and Amazon Prime, they do have a lot of other good content that I do enjoy. So why lose out on that? Disney Plus is an exception for me personally, as the only reason I have it is for The Mandalorian and the Marvel TV shows that are coming. The rest I have no interest in. I can also hurt them by not buying their merchandise that goes along with those products. So, who do we complain to? The writers of these stories? No. The directors? No. Anyone else of the film crew or the actors? No. They can only work with what they're given. So who? The people that are overseeing these franchises. I'm going to use current Star Trek as an example. I think it's safe to say that 99% of the Post-Geek Singularity is in agreement these shows are god-awful. But why is it that way? Alex Kurtzman's the reason. He's been put in total control and has been a showrunner on 2 of the 3 shows. He was the one that hired the writers that don't have the experience in the genre. He did not hire the one writer that worked on other successful space shows. It was his job to oversee everything, including the scripts that was handed in and approved. That's the reason current Trek is so bad. You don't see people complain about Kevin Feige with the MCU or Jon Favreau with The Mandalorian or Ronald D. Moore with the show he makes, because those products are good for the most part and entertaining. Going to the studio doesn't seem to do much when it comes to complaining, as they don't really listen, especially if the complaint is against those in charge. So this is why people head to the internet to make those complaints. If enough noise is made, it does get the attention of the studio to make changes, and in other cases it takes an external force, like another company buying out the studio to make the change, such as with AT&T and the Snyder Cut. We can still do harm to these people with our wallets if not buying a merchandise, but if we could get refunds from the cinema, etc., it would be even better. But until then, the only real place people can get notice with the changes that are needed for our beloved franchises is to come together on the internet and make our voices heard so the studio takes notice. but there's no need for personal attacks. Peace and long life, Dean Mikitich. Well, Dean, once again, a great letter. Thanks for writing it. Look, I don't believe necessarily in personal attacks either, even though I've been vitriolic about my hatred of modern Star Trek. I mean, I don't begrudge anybody. Alex Kurtzman, look, he got his claws into something. Why let it go? He's making a shit ton of money. A shit ton of money. I understand. You get this. You want to keep going with Star Trek. Fine. What I am baffled by, I am somehow somebody must think that they're getting some kind of added value. I disagree. I think modern Star Trek has actually diminished the value of the rest of Star Trek. I mean, just talk to the guys from Star Trek Online. How much problem do they have integrating Star Trek Discovery into into the established Star Trek lore? It makes no sense at all. You've basically thrown a wrench into 45 or now the Star Trek universe, because Discovery's a prequel. And it's supposed to be the same universe. I mean, they could have come out and said it's an alternate universe, the Kelvinverse, whatever. People would be like, okay. But no, they had to come in and say, nope, this is canonical Star Trek. It precedes the original series. And you're like, what? So you have a half century of lore and technical manuals and merchandise and books and websites like Memory Alpha that now have to figure out a way to shoehorn all of this bullshit into Star Trek history when clearly it's not. And what I can't fathom is, why did the creators of this god awful gobbledygook, why do they maintain that, yep, this is real Star Trek, when clearly it's not? Just say you got an alternate universe already. It's the history of the Kelvinverse. That would have been so easy to do. And then people would have been like, okay. That's interesting. You can do whatever the hell you want. But oh no. Oh no. So, what are you going to do? I don't know. Omar94 has written a letter, which I'm sure surprises no one. Omar, good to hear from you. Hi, Rob, moderators in the Post-Geek Singularity. Something I've seen a number of times when reading about behind-the-scenes information on movies based on books is how authors dislike the adaptations despite the movies getting acclaim. Stephen King did not like Stanley Kubrick's film adaptation of The Shining. Speaking of Stanley Kubrick, Anthony Burgess disliked the film adaptation of A Clockwork Orange. James Elroy disliked Curtis Hansen's Oscar-winning film adaptation of L.A. Confidential. Mary Poppins is a very beloved film and won several Oscars, but P.L. Travers disliked the Disney film adaptation of her books. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is a very beloved film, but Roald Dahl disowned it. Michael Ende disliked the film adaptation of Neverending Story, despite the fact that the film has become very beloved. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is very acclaimed and Oscar-winning, but Ken Kesey disliked the film adaptation of his book. There are many other examples, but those are just some I found out about. I just find that it's interesting when authors dislike the film adaptations of their books, even if the movies get acclaim. I guess they just see things differently since it's the material they created. Thanks, and live long and prosper. Well, look, I think that, for instance, in the case of The Shining, the reason that Stephen King disliked that story is because it's very different from his book. The emphasis is on things that are different, and Kubrick changed his book quite a bit and took out a lot of the overtly supernatural elements and brought it down to earth. Stanley Kubrick made a Stanley Kubrick movie out of The Shining. Dr. Strangelove began as a serious story, and I think it was based on a book called Red Alert. Was it Red Alert? And turned it into, he realized when he started developing Doctor Strange, or just developing the story, that he's like, nuclear war is so monstrous that I think the only way that he could grapple with it the way he wanted to grapple with it was through satire. And he made what, in my mind, is probably the greatest black comedy of all time. I mean, yes, we covered things like Kind Hearts and Coronets, the Ealing Studios movie that I adore, Kind Hearts and Coronets on Whining About Movies, which, by the way, Whining About Movies returns this weekend. We're looking at Zack Snyder's Sucker Punch, the extended version, which the ace has not seen. By the way, plug for her movie. If you haven't seen Doll Quest Part 1, go check that out. It's on the Burnettwork. It's her first stop-motion animated film with my goddamn action figures, which, what can I say? But anyway, yeah. So I think that's the thing, that authors feel that once they turn over their material to get made into something, into a different format, whether it's TV, whether it's movies, that they have to give up control. And a lot of the time, people emphasize certain things. And like Stephen King is a perfect example. On one hand, there are adaptations of his books that haven't gone so well. But on the other hand, he'll get A Stand By Me that was, of course, based on his novella The Body. Or he'll get Rob Reiner following that up with Misery, which is a pretty great adaptation of that novel. The Shawshank Redemption, another story that was adapted out of different seasons, where The Body came from, Stand By Me came from. Terrific, terrific film. I think De Palma's Carrie is a pretty good adaptation of King. So King's you have to take the good with the bad. I think sometimes it's just hard. And it shows you what people, when you're reading filmmakers emphasize, they're interested in doing different things. They see the story unfurling differently. And, I think it's interesting when someone like Ken Kesey sits there and says, let me talk about how different One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is from what I wrote. I can understand that, but it is still a wonderful movie. Spielberg's Jaws is very different than Peter Benchley's novel. In the novel, of course, Sheriff Brody's wife has an affair with Matt Hooper, which is so far away from the movie that Spielberg made. So it just, I can see when authors aren't happy with the adaptations that are made, because I think they feel that somehow they got shortchanged in a way, whether they did or not. I think they feel that way. So this letter comes from Alec, just Alec. First, let me thank you for reading my first letter back in Robservations 647 regarding Zack Snyder's Justice League and the importance of family in the story. In today's letter, I want to discuss an underrated TV show for inclusion into your 666th episode showcasing Lucifer in pop culture. I don't know if you're compiling a top 10 style list of top TV or film that focuses on Beelzebub to share during that special episode, but if you are, then I suggest Brimstone be a worthy contender. On Friday nights in the fall of 1998 TV season, Fox brought us Brimstone, a cop show with a difference. Beginning in 1983, New York City detective Ezekiel Stone, played by Peter Horton of 30-something fame, is living a seemingly happy life with his wife Rosalind, played by Stacey Heidick of Superboy and Sequest DSV, until one fateful night when Detective Stone's wife is brutally attacked and raped. Ezekiel tracks down and arrests the rapist, Gilbert Jacks, but Jacks gets off on a technicality. Ezekiel, filled with rage, decides to take justice into his own hands and murders Jacks in cold blood. He then covers his tracks and avoids prosecution himself. 2 months later, however, Stone is shot and killed in the line of duty. Even more unfortunately for Stone, due to him murdering his wife's rapist, he finds himself sent straight to hell. 15 years go by, I'm surprised it isn't 13, and a jailbreak from hell sees 113 damned souls escape back to the land of the living. Enter the excellent John Glover as Satan himself, who offers Ezekiel a second chance at life, so to speak, if he can find and return all 113 souls to hell. What Brimstone did in such a short time is something most TV shows struggle with in their first season, was deliver a clear vision. Brimstone's cast of characters and premise arrived almost fully formed. In the pilot, Glover was so captivating and his chemistry with Horton so electric that he was given more screen time as the devil throughout the 13 episodes, acting as an evil Al Calavici to Horton's Sam Beckett, or Selma to Horton's Captain Darian Lambert, if you remember the series Time Tracks. Oh my God. Glover's seductively charismatic performance as the devil was no doubt what led him to being cast as Lionel Luthor in Smallville, where you can see John riffing on his devil performance for sure. As a slight side note, after Brimstone's cancellation, John Glover would guest as the devil one more time in Season 3 of Perception in Episode 4, Possession. The character of Ezekiel Stone follows familiar tropes of husbands returning from the dead to right wrongs and given newfound abilities to assist in that goal, but all the while wishing to reconnect with their lost love, which you see in films such as RoboCop, Now and Again, another forgotten series from the late 90s, and to a lesser extent, DC's Ghost Rider. But Detective Stone is different to those men. He died a murderer. He died with blood on his hands, so not as a hero. Peter Horton brings amazing depth of feeling, remorse, and empathy to Stone, which is then offset superbly by the comedic intervals he has whenever Glover appears on screen. Writer-producers Ethan Reif and Cyrus Voris, two-thirds of the writers for one of my favorite horror movies, Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight, injected a rich lore into Brimstone with fine details from the beginning, such as Stone being tattooed with the names of the 113 he's tasked with capturing, written in Devil script. A name disappears each time Stone dutifully dispatches one of the damned back to hell. Ezekiel also awakens every morning in the same clothes he died in, with $36.27 in his pants pocket, the exact amount he died carrying. Unfortunately, all of this wonderful world building was for naught, as Fox, due to a change of leadership prior to broadcast, switched Brimstone from a Tuesday night prime slot to a late night graveyard slot on Fridays, no pun intended, which effectively ruined any chances of Brimstone succeeding. Add to that, Fox aired the episodes out of order, which eventually led to the inevitable canceling after just 13 episodes. In 2018, Brimstone was ranked, ironically, 13th on TV Shows on DVD.com's list of unreleased shows that deserve a physical media release. On September 15, 2008, during a home theater forum chat, Warner Home Video representatives had this to say: "Despite the wonderful work of Peter Horton and John Glover, there are no plans at this time to release Brimstone." Sounds familiar. Anyway, please seek this show out. It's out there on the interweb, albeit in VHS video quality, but it deserves a watch. I love this show and wish more people did also. P.S. Rob, please find below my suggestions for your 666 playlist. I DJ soul music in my spare time on vinyl, and I pulled a few select tunes in that genre. A couple are tenuous, but hey, the devil's in the details. All the best. Alec, as in Trevelyan, or Colonel Freeman, whomever you prefer. Ooh, James Bond and UFO. The devil's music. These all, you know what? They all sound good to me. Gil Scott. I think I already put Gil Scott Heron in the playlist, but you know what? I'm going to keep this in there, and maybe I'll do it again. What a great letter. I want to thank you for writing in. Thank you very much for that one. So yeah, I want to thank you. That's a good one. Good letter. Good letter. Let's see. This one comes from, who does this one come from? Oh, these are all, well, this comes from Catherine McClelland. Catherine McClelland. Oh, you know what? I already read this one. You know what? I think I'll jump into what you guys are saying. What are you saying? Let's see where we're at. There's a lot of people who have written in today. So let's jump over to what you guys are talking about. What are you talking about? Well, I'll tell you who's talking about something. Dakota. Dakota writes in and says, Stephen King said it best. Hang on a second here. Stephen King said it best when he said to anyone that wanted to be a writer, and that was simply to read. Read as many books you could get your hands on. And Rob, you said it best that some of the screenwriters of today just watch movies instead. I agree. I think, look, all the genres that we love, science fiction, fantasy, horror, superheroes, whatever they are, there's a literary component to all of these genres. And I think in order to write well in the genre, you have to understand the literary component of the genre, because so often we are seeing, I mean, as much as I love science fiction, fantasy, and horror movies and television, we are seeing a very distilled version down. I think the ramifications and the deeper meanings of these things are frequently left behind by the writers of our modern entertainments, and that's kind of a bummer. So, Dakota, I'm with you. People need to read. Willow writes in, sends in a tip and says, how did you react the first time you watched Spider-Man 3 and saw the scene of emo Peter dancing? I remember everyone hating it when the movie first came out, but nowadays a lot of people seem to love that part. I think at the time, and I'm certainly guilty of this, at the time when I watched that dancing scene, I'm like, really? Is this why? It's goofy. It's Raimi humor, and I just think, is this what we go to superhero movies to see? And I'm like, maybe not. Nowadays, people can look back on it, and I think people look back on it fondly because, remember at the time, Spider-Man 3 was following up Spider-Man 1 and 2, and everyone loves those movies. Spider-Man 2 is a terrific film, but Spider-Man 3 was, let's just call it, overstuffed, and I think it didn't quite go in the direction people wanted it to go into. So when that dancing scene comes along, it's like, oh, really? But now we can look back upon it fondly and smile. I mean, look, when you've seen the dance-off in Guardians of the Galaxy, you can go back to that and go, well, that's quaint. Who knew where we were going to go in the future when we saw Spider-Man 3? But at the time, I thought it was a disappointment. But now, people are like, hey, what's up? It's all right. So I would say it wasn't what I wanted, but I look back on it now and I'm like, all right, okay, that's cool. Stub McShave says, I like this week's episode of Falcon and Winter Soldier much more than last week's episode. Look, I thought it was a really, really compelling episode of TV. It asked a lot of questions, and man, that ending, holy God, that ending, wow. I mean, I don't know where it's going to go, but no place good, let me tell you that. Michaelito says, Rob, you sing the praises of Feige, Alonso, and Desposito. A shout out here to Nate Moore, who has helped guide the Captain America series and Black Panther. I'll give that up. Give that up to Nate Moore, absolutely. I mean, when I say Kevin Feige, I should pay more attention to the various showrunners and the people that are, because they're the executive producers, they're overseeing it all. But yes, there are tremendous voices that are working on these movies that are underneath these people. They're the architects, but the actual people, like you said, Nate Moore deserves kudos. So I want to thank you for bringing that up. You're absolutely right, Michaelito. So thank you for doing that. Terje. My friend, the T-Man, TTM, TT Mork, my friend in Norway, says, I am loving this series so far. It's a perfect blend of spy story and superhero antics. So Walker is a superhero landing in the end. Serum taken. Oh yeah, no, John Walker took that serum. He is now a super soldier. Make no mistake. John Walker is a super soldier. And he is the U.S. agent now, for better or for worse. I mean, that isn't going to fly in social media, but who knows? They are killing, I mean, the Flag Smashers have been killing civilians. So as much as now there's literally blood on the shield, and a lot of it, and that was a horrible thing to capture, it's not like these people, I'm not saying they have it coming, but when they find out that Battlestar was killed, John Walker is avenging, I mean, vengeance is never the greatest thing in the world, but is avenging the death of his partner. That was flat out, I mean, it was a fight scene, but still, once that gets out that he was murdered, I think people are going to understand it. They might not like it, but maybe John Walker is the Captain America that America deserves. That's why I loved reading Richard Newby's article. Compelling stuff. What do you think? What do you think about that ending? Dakota says, not every screenwriter can be a novelist, and not every novelist can be a screenwriter. Where the screenwriter just needs you to look at the scene, the novelist has to invite you into the scene by showing you the world in detail that the writer has written. Listen, Dakota, I agree with that. I mean, it's totally different sensibilities and different ways to write, and one is not necessarily easier. Screenwriting is hard. Being a great screenwriter is hard. I think in a way, I mean, writing prose is very difficult too, but I think it's easier in a way to write a story people will read than it is to write a great screenplay that can be turned into a great movie. I wonder. That's an interesting, I've never really pondered it that way. But to me, maybe because I've read many books and I've read many screenplays, and usually the books I've read have been vetted somehow because they've been published. I guess I've read a lot of screenplays that were not turned into movies, but I can say that writing a great screenplay is really hard. It's really hard. Because the idea is the screenwriter has to paint images in your mind. You have to see, when you're reading a great screenplay, you have to see the movie in your head. If you can't see the movie in your head when you're writing or when you're reading a screenplay, the screenplay has failed. So, yeah. The chat is depressing. Says, criticizing woke culture has become a way of claiming victim status for yourself, rather than acknowledging that more deserving others hold that status. It has gone from a virtue signal to a dog whistle. I don't necessarily think that's true. You know, I mean, when I say woke culture, I'm not even claiming victim status for myself. I'm just saying that what I think is happening is that there is a reality to living life on Earth, to being a human being, to living your life, getting up every day, and there are certain necessities. Like we hear a lot about how recently things like race. I mean, Robin DiAngelo, white fragility, or even Ta-Nehisi Coates' own writing. Obviously, race has been a big issue in Ta-Nehisi Coates' life. Of course, how could it not be as a black man in America? And dealing with that issue, I can completely understand where he's coming from, and I don't necessarily disagree with him. But I honestly think that you can't also not recognize the fact that people are all leading lives of quiet desperation. Everybody's thinking like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? How am I going to get there? What about my LSATs, or what college am I going to get into? And people are ultimately thinking about themselves first. And I really believe, and how can you not? You know, you were born into a world of insecurity. We don't know what's going to happen from one day to the next. And I think that without understanding that everybody is thinking about, first and foremost, their own self-interest. And by the way, I don't think that's a bad thing. That's a matter of practicality. I don't think about racism or other people's feelings before I think about myself. I don't, because I have to think about myself, because then worrying about other people is a luxury, because it means I've done something in my life where I have time to think about other people. You know, I don't have to worry about where's my next meal coming from, where am I going to put my head on the ground. You know, and while I do believe that empathy and being worried about your fellow person is something that is inherent to being human, a lot of times people are too wrapped up, and I just need to survive the day, man. You know, and when we start getting into things like, to me, the idea of woke culture is a luxury. It is a luxury to be living in a culture where, my God, I can give to charity. I can give part of my time helping other people, because that means you've squared away your life enough that you've got enough stability that you can actually move beyond yourself and go help other people. And that's pretty terrific. But I think what a lot of what goes on is that you know, a lot of this, the ideology forgets that people are leading lives of quiet desperation. And a lot of the time, I think a lot of the pushback to a lot of this, when you hear about people couching themselves, playing that victim card, like, oh, woe is me, most people are thinking, bruh, my life is no bed of roses. I'm barely hanging on. Me and my family are barely hanging on. And you're now telling me I'm a thing, or this or that. And I'm like, I'm busting my ass every single day to make money to feed my kids and put them in school and do what I need to do. And now you're telling me that you're branding me as being either a racist or a problem, or I'm a cis white male trying to help my family out. I mean, but you're telling me that, oh, no, you're a bad person. And I think that's a lot of the problem about what's been going on with these narratives. You're trying to convince people, many of whom are just trying to get through their day, that they're bad people. And I think that's problematic. You're never going to win anybody over to that. And if you're ever dealing with people that are in a position of privilege, and when I say privilege, I'm not talking about their race, but I'm talking about a place where they have enough time or enough security in their lives where they can worry about other people. And that's a privilege as well. Not just how you grew up or where you grew up. Certainly that is. I mean, we're already living in the United States. We're already living in one of the most profitable and prosperous and most well-to-do civilizations in the history of humanity. So everybody who lives in America, whether you want to admit it or not, comes from a certain perspective of privilege compared to, say, like somebody who has to bathe in the Ganges every day. So, yeah. Anyway. But you're right. The chat is depressing. But things are, not everything is about that. But I do think that the one thing about woke culture is it makes victimization at the forefront of everyone's lives. And that's not the way it should be. At least that's the way I see it. TTM from Norway says, this show is great. It's a superhero-fueled show that feels grounded and almost like a spy show. If Discovery can win Best Drama at the GLAAD Awards, Falcon has no limits. Well, let's hope not. I don't know if GLAAD would be digging what they're peddling in Falcon and Winter Soldier unless Bucky and Sam hook up, but I don't know if that's the case. Doyle Seeger says, could a film like The French Connection be made today? A carefully crafted character study crime drama mystery that takes its time and builds to a somewhat frustrating, ambiguous ending. An incredible film. Love The French Connection. Love William Friedkin, the director. I don't know. Certainly not at the studio level. A studio would never make French Connection today. Never. They wouldn't make The Exorcist either. Certainly not the way it was made. And we're lesser people for it. Lesser people for it. 200 Watt Studio says, Rob, just want to let you know Arrow Films UK is shipping to California again. Made a few orders the other day and my stuff is crossing the Atlantic. I need to do that. I need to get my 4K Battle Royale. I can't wait. Well, speaking of Kenji Fukasaku, bin he ha ha ha, or be he ha ha ha, sends in a tip and says, by the way, I did get some stuff from Arrow already that I got on sale. I can't wait to place another order with them. I'm a Fukasaku fan. From Green Slime, Message from Space, Battle Royale. How young was he when he directed scenes in Tora Tora Tora? He had to be pretty young. Because he died in the early aughts, like soon after making Battle Royale. I think he died at like 70. Let's just say he was 70. If you go back to Tora Tora Tora, he had to be around in his early 30s. So I would imagine. That's just off the top of my head. Yeah. So that's it. David Kukola is here. He of our many favorite bits of artwork that he sent us lately. David Kukola says, my favorite vehicle on UFO is the Moonmobile that made the cool noise that looked like an insect and was accompanied by an eerie sound effect. You know the one. Oh, I do. I love that. I love the Moonmobile. Very cool. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Anonymous says, just for kicks, Rob, when you write your binding contract there, be sure how you word it. For example, if you ask to fly like Superman, they could take it as the next time you get high and find yourself flying like Superman high, very high. Or if you word it to fly for real, you may very well find yourself flying out of the top of a building one way, of course. I'm just jabbing here. I know it's a show just for fun and the history of the culture around it. No, I think what you mean is like if I make a pact or a contract with the devil. To be honest, I was talking about this with Elizabeth. She didn't like me talking about making a contract with the devil. I know enough that old Scratch, if he was going to make a contract with me, I wouldn't sign it. Here's a pro tip. If the devil shows up with a contract, no matter what he offers you, do not sign it. You're going to get fucked. No matter what, don't sign your soul away to old Scratch. No matter what you need, don't do it. Wouldn't be prudent. You're going to get fucked. You're going to get fucked. Calvin Bose says, because you're doing Satan for 666, you need to do a God show for 777 because 777 is God's number. Yeah, but I mean, is 777 God's number? I mean, I could, but it's like Milton. It's like Donald Sutherland. Was Milton trying to tell us that being bad was more fun than being good in Animal House? I mean, I don't know. God's boring. Satan's always partying. God, he has creation. He kind of sits back and watches us. Satan, as Al Pacino says in The Devil's Advocate, I got my nose to the grindstone. I'm a fan of man. I'm a humanist. So, you never know. So between the devil, what Calvin was saying, and Anonymous, I'm not going to sign a contract with the devil, and maybe I'll do a show about God. Blow a Job says, Rob, season 1 of Heroes was so well done. What the hell happened to that show? Talk about fucking up a good thing, bro. One of the great weird experiences I've ever had watching TV was Tim Kring's Heroes. The first season of that show, I was so there for it. It was great, and then it just, what happened? I don't know if they changed their writing staff. I'm sure someone's written an account of what happened on that show. I don't quite know what that is, but it wasn't good. It wasn't good. It's a bummer. Stub McShave says, have you made sure that you get your piece of the pie from Doll Quest, since you are the manager of many of the talented figures on screen? Remember, you get what you negotiate. Well, Stubble, I have to say that that I think I get my talent negotiations with the creator, the showrunner of Doll Quest are such that I definitely trust. I trust in her and her abilities, and I owe her already more than I could possibly ever pay back. And the least I can do is help her make those movies. So I relinquish any and all rights I may have to Doll Quest to the wonderful creator, Elizabeth Gwendolyn Bell, the ace, the arbiter of cinematic excellence, and the enchantress of my heart. So she gets everything she wants. No contracts are needed. So there you go. TTM. Terje. I want to say Terje. I just do because I look at that's how you spell it. Sorry for the double message. Didn't think the first one got enough. On another knot of hardcover books, I found a first edition English hardcover of Planet of the Apes at a bookstore. Cheap. Have you read it? The original Planet of the Apes is quite different from what the movie turned out to be. So read it and tell us what you think. I'd be very curious. Yeah. Tell us. It's a really interesting book. Calvin Bose sends in a tip and says, what were your feelings in 1988 when you heard Michael Keaton was going to be the Batman? I remember being appalled, thinking, Mr. Mom is Batman? Boy, was I wrong. Well, Calvin, I have to tell you, I thought it was strange, to be honest. But then I read where he was coming from, where Tim Burton was coming from, his philosophy behind casting Michael Keaton. And I'm like, okay. You know, it was strange. It was odd, but I liked it. I liked his take on it. The whole movie was not what I expected anyway. It's more like a gothic... It's almost a gothic horror film. It's not your typical Batman movie. It's just it was a very different take. And even now in the pantheon of Batman, it's certainly unique in its vision. It's certainly not what I would have expected normally from Batman, but it was interesting. I mean, I liked it. Gerard Leon sends in a tip and says, hello once again to my favorite movie intellectual, Robber Baron and the Post-Geek Singularity. I'm still here. Hoping, waiting to see if they ever put Dream On physical media or on stream. I also wanted to know if you've seen the trailer for Jupiter's Legacy on Netflix. Well, first of all, Gerard, I love Dream On, and Renee Taylor is in Tango Shalom, and she was Martin Tupper's mother on Dream On, just like she was Fran Drescher's mother in The Nanny. Which, by the way, The Nanny, I want to mention The Nanny is, in terms of Tango Shalom, for all of my Florida friends, starting on April 14th, Tango Shalom is part of the Miami Jewish Film Festival. You can see it virtually if you live in Florida. Please check it out. It might even be screening at a drive-in, from what I know. I mean, that would be a first, seeing... I wish that I could have sent them the actual real file. I hope they don't project it off the 10-gigabyte file I sent them. I mean, it's fine, but it would be nice if they could have taken the 700, or we could have made a DCP, but either way. So you can see it there. But Renee Taylor, who co-stars in Tango Shalom, was, of course, in Dream On. She's also in The Nanny, which just dropped on HBO Max. And Lainey Kazan was just announced as being in My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3, because she was in 1 and 2, so she's also on Tango Shalom. So check out those lovely ladies in that realm, in that headspace, or wherever. So check it out. But Jupiter's Legacy, I read the comic. I talked about this on John Campia's show. I was in an episode of Comic Book Shopping with John Schnepp, and I really enjoyed. He hooked me up with Jupiter's Legacy, and I loved it. Can't wait to read. I can't wait to see what they do with the series. It looks fantastic. I hope it's great. The first of the Millerverse that Netflix is doing with Mark Miller's stuff. Really liked it as an original comic series. It's very compelling, really interesting. I thought the trailer looked terrific. I can't wait to see. I love the costumes. Can't wait to see how it all shakes out. So, yeah. Jared M. Snyder says, always wondered what Ian Fleming thought of Roald Dahl's screenplay of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, considering how Dahl felt about other people's screenplays of his work. Also, is Satan the ultimate entertainment lawyer? Man, that's a movie. Satan as the ultimate entertainment lawyer. He certainly was his proxy, Roman Castevet, certainly was when negotiating Guy Woodhouse's deals for further in Rosemary's Baby. That's really funny. Is Satan the ultimate entertainment lawyer? He probably is, but then there's a lot of other entertainment lawyers that are very similar to Satan. So maybe Satan is the ultimate entertainment lawyer, and he teaches all of those people how to be the kind of entertainment lawyers that they are. So that's funny. I like that. I don't know. I don't know what Ian Fleming thought of Roald Dahl's screenplay for Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. For those of you who don't know, Ian Fleming wrote the novel. James Bond, Ian Fleming, wrote the novel Chitty Chitty Bang Bang that the movie was based on. I didn't know that. So, yeah, pretty cool. But I don't know what he thought. I don't know what people are thinking. So we'll see. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle souls, kind beings from across these 28 known galaxies, I'm going to bring an end to this show. Robservations episode number 664. Thank you for being here. I very much appreciate it. And I want to say I appreciate you supporting the channel via super chats and tips, and also letters. If you want to write me a letter free of charge, you can go to the Burnettwork.net website and send me a letter. I got a lot of backlog of letters. I'm getting around to them. There's a lot of Let's Get Physical Media letters, so ton of stuff. I want to thank you for tuning in. And I also want to thank my moderating staff, beginning with Mike Bodden and the Richard. I'm going to see, I just lost my, that's odd. I just immediately lost my software when I was looking at my my moderators. I want to thank Bunyan Snipe for being here. I want to thank, let's see who else is here. Darren J. Seeley is here. Luis X Sparrow is here. Now that we know what the X is for, I love that. I love saying Louise X Sparrow. Justin Toner is here. And I want to thank all of you for being the great moderating staff that you are. And, of course, we will be back tomorrow with Whining About Movies, doing Sucker Punch, which Elizabeth hasn't seen. I can't wait to hear what she has to say about this. And we're watching the extended version. So Sucker Punch this weekend. And a lot of people have asked about Midnight Metal. Will Midnight Metal be back again? Tonight, Midnight Metal comes back. Midnight Metal comes back. I might start it at 11 or something. But Midnight Metal tonight. Join me for some Midnight Metal. We'll have a few drinks, have a few laughs. We'll talk about what you want to talk about. So far, I don't have a guest. People said, it's funny. People are like, you have a guest on. And I'm like, I could. Or people just like it when I riff and get drunk. I don't know, I don't know. I don't know which one works better. I guess that's up to you to tell me, but we'll see how it works. So, yes, tonight, Midnight Metal will be back. Look out for it. I hope you all join me, because a fun time will be had by all. And on that note, I just want to say, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, have a better day. And you know what? Join me. Join us, like the Evil Dead say, for Midnight Metal tonight. Yeah!